Attention, bobsled riders! You will soon be embarking on a thrilling podcast down the icy slopes of the Matterhorn. So please remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the bobsled at all times. Auf Wiedersehen!
Hello, Yodlers! We are the Matterhorn Yodlers. I am your host, Japheth, and I am with
Jackie.
and
I'm Bob Chapek. No, it's
oh
Peter.
my gosh, what an honor!
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I heard Peter wasn't here today, so I wanted to be a part of the show. No, it's Peter.
It's Peter.
It's Peter.
Peter Paycheck. All right, so Peter's clued you into what we're discussing. We're talking about
Bob Chapek.
No, we're
and his
talking
failure.
about-
We're going to talk about everything we hate about Bob Chapek. Starting in alphabetical order. A. Absent at everything. No. Sorry. Ruined your intro there.
Yeah, and we're talking about the men who lead the company or don't lead, according to Peter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got that recent change,
Within the last year.
Chapek has now that Iger has officially, he's no longer even a part of the board anymore.
Yeah.
It's all eyes on Chapek now.
Yep.
So
He's leading the company now, and it's fascinating because we grow up different eras. Like the start of the company, Walt was the leader of this company. His name's on it, and then it's like, okay, who leads the company after him?
right.
And then after that, and as people who know the history, there's good times, and then the company starts to decline, and then someone comes in and brings it up, and they get stale, and then somebody else comes in and change. And in order for this company to survive, the theme is you have to innovate
Yes.
and get back to the roots of animation. That's just that's what gets you going.
I mean, you see it throughout history of the Disney parks and their leadership is like, you see the highs and then you see the lows, and you're like, what brought it up to the high? Innovation.
Yep. Always. Every single time.
Taking risk, and so we're going to talk about some of the individuals that were part of those highs and lows and what they were doing, and we'll bring this up with right after Walt's death, because we've talked about Walt and what he's done, but what's happened after Walt. We'll be going into that, and followed by Jackie with Michael Eisner, and I'll kind of finish off with Bob Iger, and we'll leave Bob out of this because he's still new.
He's still new.
There's plenty more for us to write about his biography later.
He's just starting at a low.
I will say there is bad timing with his start, but his track record prior was not very good either. But that's besides the point.
Peter is a big opinion. I actually have a quote from Mike Eisner, who hired Bob Chapek.
Yes. Yes, towards the end of Eisner, which we'll talk about that.
That's not a high point right there. Okay, so Peter.
Yes.
Walt has passed, and who takes over?
Walt's brother comes back. He comes back out of retirement to help finish Walt Disney's dream of Walt Disney World, and honestly, Roy was prepared to go all the way to his death, which he did.
He really did.
He basically he passed away as soon as Walt Disney World was dedicated. Just
6 months afterward?
No, just a couple months.
Yeah.
It was dedicated in October, and he passed away in December. So literally he gave his all for his brother's legacy. So props to Roy. I'm not going to dwell too much on Roy because his connection is very tied with Walt's. So
yeah, he was more business. He was the business mind.
He was the numbers guy.
Yes.
Yeah. He dealt with the banks.
Yes.
Walt dealt with the imagination.
Yes. So then that led into the next direction. So Disney had to move forward, right? They lost the Disney brothers. They were gone. And so they pulled in Don Tatum, which was basically Roy's right-hand man, handling a lot of the finances at the time. So a little bit of history about Don Tatum. Not much. Literally, I tried looking his information up on the Disney Wiki, and he doesn't even have his own page. The closest thing I got for information on him on there was that he was a CEO of Disney. That was it. So I had to go other sources to
He was
find.
a very private man.
Right, right. So he went to school to Stanford. He was a lawyer, practiced entertainment law as of 1938. He didn't join the Disney company until 1956. So definitely towards the end there. So about 10 years before Walt's death is when he joined it. And he was hired on as Disney's production business manager. And then from there, he kind of worked with Roy, working the numbers. And so when Roy passed away, the board all felt that like it should go to Don because he worked more closely with Roy.
It just shows you how unprepared they were. For,
They were not
They were
prepared.
not prepared for
They did not.
the handing over of power in this situation.
Yeah.
No. And so, but they also grabbed Card Walker to kind of help him on the creative side. So, like, Don handled more of the business and Card handled more of the creative. And this kind of sparked an interesting time period for the Disney company as a whole. So, we have this point where, like, Walt Disney came and he was dreaming of bigger and better things. And then Walt passed away and they kind of moved forward with the mantra of what would Walt do? Which is exactly opposite of what Walt would do. Walt would not be like, what am I doing that's making me successful? Let's just keep doing that only.
Yeah, right.
He was always pushing the boundary, doing something new, great. So literally during Don Tatum and even Card Walker, which I'll talk more about here in a second, you saw just in their films, it was the same sort of films that Walt Disney was making. And you got to keep in mind, like, this is like, 60s into the 70s. This was the rise of blockbuster movies.
They were starting to get more. Yeah.
And so, like, Disney's movies were falling apart. They weren't really investing too much into the theme parks.
America was changing too.
Yes.
I mean, you have the late '60s. People are going to the moon. You have mass protests with the Vietnam War. Every time America goes to war, it changes entertainment.
Oh, totally does.
There's just a very real one they talk about in World War One and then World War Two. They say World War Two changed how Hollywood worked. They said that the golden age was pre-World War Two. After that, you had television come in, so you have different things coming into fruition, and yeah, I could definitely see, it lagging. If you're continuing to do what you did in the 50s and 60s, it ain't gonna work in the 70s
Correct.
and 80s.
And that's what they're running into. Like, and for the one thing that I think Disney fans want to see more of now is that they didn't bump prices, they didn't raise prices for their theme parks. They kind of kept it pretty stagnant to where it was when both Disneyland and Disney World opened in terms of how much it cost to get in. I'm sure a lot of Disney fans are like, bring it back to $60. That would be great.
I remember when they were $40.
Right. And so, like, they weren't really, like, growing. And so instead they decided he would just focus on certain things that Walt Disney was working on. So they worked on, like, Space Mountain. That was a big one that Walt was kind of working on in the meantime. And then Don helped start the pathway for Epcot as well as Tokyo Disney. So he stayed on till about 1976 and then brought in his replacement, which was Card Walker. So a little bit about Card Walker. He went to UCLA. He worked for Disney for a long time. He started in 1938, so back Snow White's time.
Whoa.
He worked back in the mailroom. So, like, this guy, like,
Monsters Inc. Got started in the
he
mailroom.
literally was a mailroom to CEO guy.
Wow,
So
that's great.
he worked in the mailroom in 1938 till 1941 to 1941. He ended there, working in the camera department as well as the unit manager for short subjects. And then World War II came and he enlisted into the Navy. And then he came back to Disney after that, and then eventually rose to become the VP of Advertising and Sales in 1956. So the same time Don Tatum came on, Card Walker came on, pretty high up there. And then in 1960, he got put on the board of directors. 1966, he became the vice president and the COO with Don Tatum. And then from 1976 to 1983, he was the CEO. And again, very similar mindsets. What would Walt do? You saw the things come in for like Big Thunder Mountain. He gets credited for Disney Channel, but I would not give him credit. That would go to the next CEO, I would say. But again, it was...
Well, that's when cable started really coming in.
Right.
You got like ESPN popping up and HBO
Right.
around that time period. I could see that.
And so this mindset of what would Walt do kind of set Disney up in a dangerous position, jumping into the 80s here. You know, their movies were doing horrible because they weren't comparing to the likes of Star Wars and things like that. Like, they weren't pulling in the money like they used to, and
Their
so
quality was
right.
not that great.
It was about the same quality that you saw back in the 60s, and that's not what
They
you want
started
to
using
see.
Xeroxing things. They brought in Xerox machines to help with the process, and they got rid of more people out of animation.
Right.
And
It was just Disney was becoming less valuable, and therefore was set up for a basic corporate takeover. The events that transpired during Don and Card Walker's time period led to Roy E. Disney, Roy's son,
So
or
Walt's
nephew. He was on the board, and he left because, like, he goes, "You guys are ruining everything. Like, I don't want anything to part of it." He actually came back during this whole fiasco where the Disney company almost was gone. It was almost sold to pieces through Green Mail and a lot of other stock stuff. So it had to all do about, you know, corporate buyouts and things like that. So, and that brings us into the last one I'm going to talk about, which is Ron Miller, who kind of took over after Card Walker, who had to handle that sort of stress here. A little bit about Ron Miller. He married Diane Disney, which is Walt's daughter.
His
Only biological
daughter. Yeah.
Yes, because he adopted his other daughter. He was drafted into the Army in 1954. He was an athlete. He played in the NFL for the LA Rams. There's a funny story about that. So Walt only went to a couple of his games while he was in the NFL, and like he was very good on the team, but he was also accident prone. Like, he was always getting injured, always.
Talk about Ron Miller.
Yes, Ron Miller. And Walt would see this, and like after that, he went to at least 2 of the games. On the second game he went up to Ron and said, "Hey, I'm too old to raise my grandchildren. Why don't you come work for me?" And so he took him up on that. So he left the NFL and joined
It wasn't
Walt.
like the NFL today where they have millions of dollars. Like these
Right.
guys, some of these guys had jobs afterwards.
Yes, correct. It wasn't the big multi-billion-dollar industry that it is now.
A non-profit industry, right?
Non-profit. So when he got started, he kind of was the liaison between Wed Enterprises, which is what we know now as Imagineering, and Disneyland. So basically, he was their go-between. Anytime someone needed to communicate from one side of the business to the other.
They didn't heard telephones yet.
Right. So that was...
He was the
I'm important. You need me. I've got people skills.
That's how he started. But then Walt was kind of grooming him to become a film producer. And so he was a film producer for a variety of different films like Pete's Dragon, Escape to Witch Mountain, Son of Flubber, Summer Magic, That Darn Cat.
And that's where Walt was trying to go into more live action.
Yes.
Because animation was going down.
Right. And there's actually a funny story, I think, with, I think it was 20th Century Fox at the time. They wanted Ron Miller to be an actor to be in this role. I think he was in one movie. I forgot what movie it was, and then they wanted to do several other movies with him, and Walt convinced him not to do it. He says, no, you don't want to go down the actor route. You want to go down the producer route. And that's what led him down this road here. So he became CEO through 83 to 84, so very, very short window. And he had, most of the time, he had to deal with this big corporate buyout. I would recommend, I don't want to get into it here because it's not really good Disney discussion. It's more of like a stocks and things like that. So if you're really into that sort of thing, I would look up the Disney buyout of 84. I think it's
very interesting when this comes up because it makes you think about like what would have happened. What would we have? We wouldn't have what we had today.
We
that's
would
for
not
sure.
have what we have
right.
today.
So he gets credited for Touchstone, Disney Channel, and using computer animation. And he also brought in I'm forgetting him, Tim Burton. He helped bring Tim Burton into the company as well. Ron Miller was definitely, if there was a person that had the mindset of Walt Disney, it was Ron Miller. Like, he understood, like, we need to push the boundary. Like, we got the movie like The Black Hole, which did not perform well, but it was at least like
movie.
It was an attempt to become a blockbuster and not just another Herbie movie.
Herbie takes on the black hole. I don't know. That would have been really
It was
good.
Herbie 4.
Yeah,
Herbie 4 against the black hole. Let's keep that in mind. So, like he did a lot of innovating and like he had a lot of passion. He wanted to be a part of it. And after this whole corporate buyout situation with Roy E. Disney did come back eventually, and they all agreed to like try to figure out what they need to do to better the company. And even Ron was on board with this, and Ron gets told that he's getting fired. And it said
that's what boards do.
And they said that he did cry when he found out that they were letting him go as the CEO.
He probably thought he was going to be like
he was going to bring it out.
He knew Walt and like
literally, if you look at like what he did, what he brought in with Touchstone, Disney Channel, computer animation, that literally pushed everything in terms of like the movies to the next level for Disney. That set up Eisner to help make Touchstone explode.
It
because
pushed him to like, okay, we've got this going. How do we fill this in?
Right, because at that time Disney was only making family-friendly stuff, and so when Ron decided to make Touchstone, it was a way for them to make more adult movies without having to put the Disney name on it.
R-rated film.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which the first big blockbuster, which was Splash, which Eisner was obsessed with. But that's another story for another time. But yeah, and that's sadly Ron Miller's story as CEO. Very brief, unfortunate time period. He did recently pass away within the last few years.
His wife, Walt's daughter, died. She died of was it breast cancer?
I think so.
Yeah, a fairly couple decades ago. It was she died young, so that's a hard life, and it's hard. Like you can see, like you reach the top, and then they're like, "Hey guys, you're gone. Like bye bye."
Yeah.
And
well,
like,
a lot of people.
What do I do now?
A lot of people look down on Ron because they felt he was there because of nepotism.
Of course.
And so there was that element of
That's probably why Roy was like, I can't do this because I've got the name and it'll look like I've pulled the strings.
Right. But I will say, if it wasn't for Roy E. Disney, we probably would not have the Disney company. We would not be having the Matterhorn Yodelers discussion.
I don't think so. As negatively as some people are about Roy, he kept the company going.
He did.
Yeah.
And that's important.
So that's my story up to now. Lead us into the next chapter, Jackie.
Yeah, so we're in this like big transition of like where Disney is becoming very, I would say big. it exploded and
During Michael Eisner's era,
during
yes.
Michael Eisner's era, Disney exploded. And so going back to Michael Eisner's history, can you guess what he majored in college?
Law.
Peter?
I don't remember.
Just guess.
I'll say like television, entertainment, something.
English literature and theater.
Oh, okay.
And so you just, I don't know, just hearing that and like English literature and theater.
His dad was a lawyer. That's what it was.
It's just interesting that he was a CEO of Disney. And so it's just like, don't let your degree limit you. That's what I learned.
Yeah, with Bob, he mentions, he's like, I went to school and that's it. Like, he doesn't mention anything about his schooling. He's like, I learned a lot. I learned as much as I could, and I moved forward. I got a job.
Yep.
So Eisner got internship through the entertainment industry, through like NBC, and stuff, and he got a job in ABC and kind of worked his way up and basically helped saved ABC. It was like number 4 in the television market.
And ABC wasn't a part of Disney at this time.
No, this was before, and he brought it up to number 1. So he helped. He was a specialist in like daytime and like
Daytime
morning
TV, yeah.
and daytime and morning TV. And then he was hired on by Paramount Pictures to kind of help that.
He was their CEO, wasn't he? Or he was
Yeah, he was the CEO of Paramount Pictures. And then after Paramount Pictures, he was hired on by the Disney Company. In 1984, he became the chairman and CEO of Disney with Frank Wells.
Which, again, like that's a interesting story right there about, because there was a lot of back and forth between, because it was basically down to Frank Wells and Eisner as to who was going to be the CEO. And eventually I think Frank Wells came up with the idea and said, like, listen, like, I don't need to be like, they wanted them both to be like CEO together, and
That never works.
Eisner was like, no, I'm not doing that.
He just want to do co-power.
And
Yeah.
eventually, like, Frank Wells said, listen, like, Eisner's really good here and I'm really good here, so I'm okay with just being the money guy and he be the creative guy.
And that was like the relationship. Frank was the money guy, he was the business guy, and Eisner was the face of the company.
Oh yeah, he's part of my childhood right there.
Yep,
There's those shows on TV.
Yep, he was. He did brought back like what Wonderful World of Disney.
Yes.
I remember. Was it Saturday or Sundays?
Sunday night.
Yeah, Sunday night. You always had Disney movies.
Angels in the end zone. HE double hockey sticks.
Yes.
Yep. And it's just interesting. They're too dynamic, and I think they both balance each other out well.
They were a perfect combo team.
Yes.
They talk a little bit about that transition period in the Imagineering.
Yeah, I watched it recently just to kind of get caught up on the relationship, and from the Imagineering side, they liked it because they talked about like Frank was very innovative. He liked the future. He was willing to invest in technology and stuff to make a better future. And
right.
Eisner was, I think he liked the show of it, the fun of it all, and he was all for that. And so you have two guys coming in with a lot of dreams and hope for the company.
Some good energy.
Yeah, it was a great energy.
As I stated before, like when I'm talking about the 3 prior, they didn't really focus in on the parks. Like they did a couple things, like they did the big projects. They did Epcot, and they did Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
and then they cut off all.
And then that was it. Like they just like, okay, we've invested enough money in this. We're done. Which kind of put all those people out, and then that transition happened, and they're all thinking that they're gonna get fired, but all of a sudden it's like, no, we're gonna make you grow.
Yeah. And so that kind of goes into like some of the good that came through Eisner. I mean, Eisner, 1984 is when he started, and so you got to think all the movies: Beauty and the Beast, Lion King,
They brought about the rise of the animation renaissance.
Yeah.
The Disney renaissance
the
of
Renaissance
animation.
period,
I mean, I think he definitely helped contribute and saved Disney animation, bringing in good.
he built it up and then he killed it.
It's
we'll
interesting.
get to that.
Yeah.
Hey, you did such a great job. You're fired. We're sending your job to Japan.
Right.
Little Mermaid 3, do it.
Yeah, so there was a lot of good in the 80s, early 90s.
I got the Disney decade,
Yeah.
which was, that was the big pitch, which Eisner sometimes gets flack for because there was a lot of things promised that didn't come about because of in the Disney decade. But we got a ton of expansion, especially at Walt Disney World during that time period. I mean, we
MGM.
got 2 theme parks.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he announced the Disney decade at the opening of the MGM. So I'll consider that part of it. That, we have Animal Kingdom. They had it was it 10 or 12 resorts?
Oh yeah, the resorts came in.
All over the place. Water parks, downtown Disney District,
Yeah, so Hollywood Studios Animal Kingdom came in. He developed cruise ships,
Yep.
water parks, all of those things. And then, he went to Europe. He went to Disneyland Paris.
He did Paris.
In which they invested a lot of money in Paris. And I've been there. It is a beautiful park. The castle is beautiful.
I think their headline, because all of them have different headlines, says I think Disney World Paris is the most beautiful place on earth.
Yeah.
I think that one's theirs. Which, from what I've seen, I haven't been there, but from what I've seen, it does. They definitely took artistic liberty and made that thing gorgeous.
And Eisner gave the Imagineers that freedom and really pulled in some big names of artists and such. But then I think Eisner, and he kind of talks about this in the Imagineering special of he did not he was expecting Florida crowds and the Florida people to come in Paris, but he was that was foolish thinking.
They didn't take in a cultural experience.
Yeah.
The French people aren't. They have castles. They have real ones.
Yeah.
They're not amusement park people.
Well, and they also didn't sell at opening. They didn't sell alcohol in the park, which for the people in France, that's a big deal.
Oh,
Man,
absolutely.
You can't even walk down the streets without bumping into bottles of empty wine on the street. It's just part
true.
of the culture.
When I just remember in Paris, I just hear someone empty out a restaurant empty out garbage, and it's just glass bottles of that was alcohol. It's just a lifestyle there. And they built this huge hotel and beautiful hotel, very expensive hotel. It was running 60% occupancy, which that's not good in the industry.
For a brand new theme park, no.
So you're breaking even?
Probably not.
No, I believe they lost money.
Yeah, I was you're losing money there, and so.
And that was the beginning of the end for him. Animation was starting to sink.
Well, that is, you can definitely take that as the catalyst of the fall of Eisner. There's 2 parts. There was Disneyland Paris, and then there was the death of Frank Wells.
Yeah, Frank Wells dies. Helicopter crash. Terrible event. And all the pressure was now on Eisner at that point. And the thing is with those 2 relationships, how they explained it was Eisner would just throw it out. Every idea, all ideas.
He did.
And Frank Wells would pick the good ones.
There were definitely some creative ideas that Eisner put out there. How many people remember the Mickey Mouse fast food restaurant? Nope, I bet not.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of interest. Oh, do you guys heard of the Disney Institute?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Disney Institute was this big idea that Eisner had, and he wanted this to become a thing at Disney World because he knew not everyone who wanted to go on vacation wanted to do theme parks. So he came up with an alternative schooling education where you could learn how to bake or do animation or things like that at Disney World if you wanted to take a break or whatnot. Like, it was all part of, making Disney World your all-inclusive location.
What'd you do at Disney World? I made bread.
Right, right. But they would have like speakers and experts come out. So like, it was a cool thing. It was a cool idea, but just it wasn't making
It's
enough
not very
money.
marketable to people.
And eventually, I think it became. Which resort did it become? Was it the Saratoga?
Probably.
I think it was the Saratoga
Very
Springs.
obscure one that's out there.
Yeah, so like
It's
that
very
used to be the
yeah.
Disney Institute, and so yeah, there was a lot of interesting ideas that came about during Eisner's era.
But so Eisner's going on. He's some of the companies in his when he was CEO that acquired was ABC.
Yeah,
That was
from
a big
Capital
one.
City. That was huge.
Yeah, that
It was $19.5 billion in 95. It's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money.
Because when Bob Iger takes over, the company's worth $25 billion. So it shows you how much of ABC, ESPN, like all that falls under there, contributes to the Disney,
Yes.
worth at that time.
And then you also have the Fox family, which is now known as Freeform, which is like the ABC family.
25 days of Halloween, 25 days of Christmas.
It's April.
Yeah.
It's Christmas in July, so we're gonna show you Christmas movies all month long.
Yeah.
I have to see Hocus Pocus one more time.
Yep, that's where you watch Hocus Pocus, that's for sure.
And then of course you've got the Muppet franchise, which Eisner acquired, and we discussed
Almost,
a little bit.
yeah.
Almost
Almost acquired
almost
it in the
acquired.
early
Oh, yeah.
80s and then, picked it off at the very end.
Yes.
That kind of gets the ball rolling for Bob and like, oh, let's get the rights for these characters and stuff like that.
Yes.
Let's get content.
And so he is now building other theme parks we know as California Adventure. We also have Hong Kong, Disney, and then we have the second expansion at Euro Disney,
Yeah.
which
All
With-
three. Ugh.
Yep. And Eisner's idea was smaller theme parks.
Yeah.
That was his idea, would be better to have smaller theme parks, basically half-day parks. And
for a while, most of those were half-day parks.
the thing was, with the Euro expansion, they had to do that expansion. It was in their contract too. Because if they didn't, they would lose the land altogether.
I figure it was more of a land issue.
Yep, they would have to. They would lose the land, and so it was just kind of thrown together. I've been there. It's not that great. It's small.
It's rough. Let's hope their expansions that they're working on right now really revitalize that.
It doesn't. You don't feel like you're in a park at all. That's
Interesting.
you're just backstage basically. There's no weenie.
Tower of Terror is the closest weenie you have
Yeah.
because it is in the center of the park.
Yeah.
So.
And then you've got
But that didn't happen till later.
You've got the project of California Adventure going on at the same time as Hong Kong.
Yes.
Both with two different budgets.
Yep.
Um,
And I'll tell you which one got cut. California Adventure.
Yeah.
California Adventure's budget.
California had the less budget. They wanted to expand and kind of save Anaheim because before the surrounding of Disneyland was not great. Very motel-y, kind of run down.
If you want to know what it looked like, drive down the 192 in Kissimmee in Florida. That's what it looked like. It was just like you see weird wizard shops and
Yes.
and like side
Wizard shops are like an icon of the area, I swear.
It's true.
It's just like what's going on?
Which one? There's 2 different wizards.
There's just like you get these side theme parks and you get
Yes.
these it's just you get these like mini golf courses.
I think the mini golf one's gone now. That got closed down.
There was like 4 or 5
Yeah.
of them on that road. Ugh.
And so they wanted to kind of build a second park and kind of help the city and help the park itself, which they came up with Disney California Adventure. There was a lot of ideas floating around. Of course, Tony Baxter wanted Westcott, which honestly I think that would have been a great idea.
I don't know. Like, it's a great idea in theory, but I feel like it would turn into what's happening with Epcot right now, and I feel like that's not good either. So, I don't know. I don't know if Westcott would have worked.
Just make it another World Showcase.
Yeah. So.
But so the main thing with California Adventure was they didn't have as much money, and so
You get the exciting ride of Superstar Limo.
yes,
No, it's horrible.
yep, Superstar Limo.
I
And
wish I was on that ride with him and just to hear the words come out of his mouth. Like, before he speaks to the press, he's like, that is garbage!
You should watch. So, like, they did a special when California Adventure.
Yeah, they got like the
opened.
Drew Carey
Yes.
show on there.
So, like, they show them riding the ride,
cringe.
and their faces, like, you could tell how bad the ride was just watching them.
Because you have to see them try to act like it's exciting. They're
Right.
like, oh, there's Drew! Oh! And you're just like, oh man, they're trying
this
so
is
hard.
bad.
yeah, and so that was a kind of a failure of Disney California Adventure because people were like, are you going to go to California Adventure or are you going to go to Disneyland? Everyone goes to Disneyland. I mean, I remember growing up, California Adventure is a half-day park.
Yep.
And they made it to be a half-day park.
It was meant to be that.
But it wasn't a good half-day park.
They were trying to get like the locals to go there. To,
Yeah.
like, go to your state fair, kind of.
Yeah, go get some food. And
We serve alcohol here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, I would say, put the nail in the coffin almost of the downfall.
It left a sour note in everybody's mouth for Eisner. Eisner, I will give props to Eisner. He is definitely, like, in my eyes, I feel there's not one CEO that did more, except for Walt, for the Disney company, except for Eisner.
Yes.
Eisner
True.
did the most.
Eisner had a rough patch towards the end, but you can't forget about his beginning.
We wouldn't have the company.
No.
We wouldn't have had that animation period, without that type of leadership that
He
had.
saw the creativity, the innovation, and pushed forward for that.
But there's a point where when you're in power too long, people start they're starting to be afraid to say no, and the ego grows. Because there was a story where there was an interview where Michael's walking through one of the resorts. He's like, "You see that lampshade? I picked that out." And it's just like, I remember, like, what was it? Bob was saying, like, "Yeah, that's great, but you don't need to tell them that you did that. Like,
Right.
that just shows you, like, okay, power's gone to your head." Because Michael is a very big micromanager type person, and that was shown in that kind of statement of like, "Look at that lampshade on me," like.
It's
ooh.
true, and they talk about it, and they're like saying like Eisner was very involved. He was always like hanging out with the Imagineers, seeing what
Yes.
they're doing, and that's something Walt would do.
Yeah, he
often.
was in his sandbox, his
And
playground.
so-
It's definitely, like, in my opinion, the closest we got to a Walt Disney replacement.
Yeah. They said one thing. Bob mentioned, he goes, Michael's pessimism led to paranoia, then led to defensiveness, and then risk aversion, and that led to his undoing. And it really, like, you get worried, like, oh no, I'm not doing this so well, and then you start pulling back, and that's the last thing you want to do, is pull back in a company that innovates. And that really, like, that I think that led to his
Yeah.
right there.
And basically, I think Eisner knew that he was gonna be booted out, and so he he retired or left.
He left
Well,
on
he
his
knew
own
because
terms.
the board was meeting and
yeah,
like
he left a year before his contract ended.
Yeah.
his last showing was Hong Kong, and like that was like his last day, and everyone was like, "Hey, Mike."
Right. Now it goes
Good save, bro.
that line from Batman where it's like, you either die the hero or you live to see yourself become the villain. And he saw himself become the
He
villain.
become the villain. Yes. Okay, so we ready for Bob?
Yeah.
All right.
Sir Bob.
Robert Iger. A lot of this is driven from his book that just came out called The Ride of a Lifetime. I have now listened to this book twice. I listened to it yesterday entirely at 3 times the speed, so if I talk really, really fast, that's because that's how my mind works right now. No, he became CEO, and he was CEO for 15 years, just about. He saw the company go from $25 billion to $256 billion. Yes, inflation has gotten that bad, folks. No, no, he grew the company immensely. It may not be the same way creatively, quality movies but he grew content and technology.
He basically set Disney up to never go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kept it alive in such a quick moving society. And I'll talk a little bit like what goes on. So we'll go into his early life. He was born in Brooklyn. He grew up in Long Island. Dad's working class. His family's working class. He's the older of 2 kids. He says, well, I wasn't poor, but I didn't have a fancy life. No fancy vacations. I had a food, roof, and clothes. And so I wasn't poor, but I had love. And so, as opposed to what Michael was, Michael grew up in upper middle class. So Bob's dad, he was a learner, taught him the importance of reading and being aware of the world. Dad was he was a musician, a trumpet person, but he started his career in marketing. Dad wanted them to really impose on having goals and using his time and using their time to focus on those goals. His relationship with his mother relied on him to fix problems around the house, and so he built a curiosity with technology and how things work. I was like, well, that's kind of important later.
Yep.
That's really going to serve him. And Bob never worried about the future. He had no problem just trying and failing and determining not to live life in the past or with disappointment. So that really drives him. He's like, we're going forward. That's just how it goes. I'm not scared of what's going to happen. And, as I go into some of his accomplishments, it really is like how he goes. So before Disney, like he goes off to school, he goes to Ithaca. He doesn't really focus on his education. He wasn't big in like high school. He just worked. He had multiple jobs. He was just hustling to make money. And, he had a really strong work ethic going into his job, starting off ABC TV News. He wanted to be a TV news anchor, but he wasn't really good at it.
Nope.
So his first job, he was like a stage manager where he's doing whatever needed to happen with the stage, like moving sets and moving things around. He said he had a good interaction where he got to meet Frank Sinatra, where Frank Sinatra really needed Listerine. He needed mouthwash, and so he ran. It was down Madison Square. Get the mouthwash, and knocks on the door, and he's like, I've got his Listerine. And the guy's like, who are you? And Frank goes like, come on in, and he got to meet Frank Sinatra, and he gave him a $100 bill, and he got a lighter later that night. Everyone did. And he was just amazed at like the perfection that Frank was trying to achieve with the show. Like he saw them go through the run through, and they completely changed it, and it got done. And so that mentality of like seeking perfection, he learned a really good lesson there. He gets in trouble with one of the managers there because he sees some people like skimming stuff off the top, and so he's just like, this isn't right. And so he eventually transfers over to ABC Sports, gets lots of great experience, good mentors. He learned from a guy, Rune. His mentor taught him, show was everything, exhaust all means. Just get it done. Do what you need to do to make it better was the mantra that he got from it. I was like, well, that's a pretty good one to have. One of his stories he got was he had to get the rights to film the ping pong tournament in North Korea. And at the time, America was not allowed in North Korea. The State Department was like, no, you can't give them money do anything. And so somehow Bob got other people to give money to them. Like, State Farm's like, yeah, it'd be great if you do it, but you can't give me any money. And it's like, how can I go in someone's country and be like, I'm going to film ping pong here without giving someone money there?
Right.
But somehow he got it done. And so he just was known as a person of getting things.
He was resourceful.
He just got it done by all means. And so that really helped him progress in the company to the point where he got put into daytime TV. And then he was put into ABC Entertainment, where he was just like, let's just go. And so you get like different shows that didn't do so well. But he gave like George Lucas's Young Indiana Jones.
Yep.
That was on ABC. That was under his watch, which would help him later on the road dealing with George. I mean, I love the Young Indiana Jones series. It just wasn't popular. It didn't last very long. You got NYPD. So he took risk. Like, NYPD was like an R-rated TV show.
Yeah.
And you're going to put this on daytime TV? You're nuts. He's like, we got to do something to compete with like HBO. And but he did it. And eventually gets to the point where he's running ABC. And then ABC is bought out by Disney. And so he goes to like Michael and he's like, okay, this is how everything goes. And like I said, the worth of what ABC is bringing to Disney,
was quite large.
It's quite large. And he goes like, oh, this is how everything works. Because usually when a merger happens, you get somebody that you know to take over the big part. And he's like, I can't deal with that. I got my own business. I got parks and stuff. This is 95. You need to do this. And so basically he makes him like CEO of the company and running eventually in Disney. Was it 2000? So he's learning under Michael. He's like, basically like, we're trying to groom you, but we're not giving, because Michael's not going to be like, you're going to be my successor.
Yeah.
Because Michael at this point is getting a little like,
yes,
this is the paranoia, and you don't want to be like, here's my number 2, and everyone's like, oh really? What do you have to say? That's nice, Michael. What are you going to do? Like, you don't want that to happen.
right.
Well, it does eventually happen. It leads to that paranoia. Michael steps down, and so he's getting interviewed, and he has to get a political campaign person. So we wouldn't even think, like, you're applying for a job. You don't think you need, like, a political campaign manager to get a job, but it was what he needed because he doesn't have that mindset. He's always like, just get the job done, you're good. You know, like, no, you're dealing with other very successful members on these boards, other CEOs of companies, too, on this board. And so he comes up with a plan, and I really like it. And so he goes about the future, because that's what he wanted to focus. Because everyone's like, well, you work for Michael, you know, do I associate all the garbage with him? And you don't want to trash the guy. You want to be classy. He goes, no, we're talking about the future. And he goes, first, we're going to build high brand content. 2, embrace technology to the fullest and create and distribute to reach other people. And the third step is to become a global company. And so keep that in mind as I talk about everything that he does. At this point, he had to convince 10 board members to give him the job. He eventually gets the job. He does have a story where the process is so arduous, and this guy keeps asking the same question, and at just one point he goes like, I've already answered that question 3 times. And he's just like, he talks to the managers like, so how'd it go? And he's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have lost your cool, not the best part. And he's like, I'm so tired of this, because it's like a long process, and the company needs to move forward, because you always get the little people. So after he gets a job, the first thing he has to do is make amends with Roy, because Roy was like, he was trying to bring down the company. Like Comcast was coming down to buy out Disney, like the cable company. So that would have been crazy. Yeah, we would not have what we've gotten in the last 15 years if they've done that.
No way.
For sure. It would have been killed. So Roy had to make amends with Roy's, and this is where Bob really succeeds. He is a people's person when dealing with big egos, and he made amends with Roy and be like, hey, this is how we're doing it, this is where we're going. I want you to be a part of it, you know, because Michael kicked him out because of, you can't be on the board if you're older than 72. Like, he did ageism to the fullest on this guy.
Yes, he did.
He's like, nope, we want you gone. And like, Michael, he burned a lot of bridges, especially, you know, so once he makes amends with Roy, he's got to start creating content. He's got to build things, and he sees he goes to the park. He's like, where are the movie characters in the last like 10 years? Nobody. You're seeing what's been done in the past, and he's just like, okay, we need content, and it's like, well, we need Pixar because Michael's really burned that bridge with Steve Jobs and like threatened to like, well, we've got 2 more movies and we can do as many sequels as we want. So we could have had like Toy Story 25, like according to Michael, and like that's what he was going to do.
I remember back when I was applying for the college program back in 2006, right? They showed a video of like everything that they're working on, and they showed Toy Story 3. And Disney didn't own Pixar at this point, and like Toy Story 3 didn't happen for another like
2010.
So like another 4 more years.
Yeah.
So like the Toy Story 3 that they were telling me that they were working on was not the Toy Story we got.
Oh no. No. So around 2006, this is the time where Michael sees the writing on the wall. Is like, all right, Animation Studio sucks.
Yeah.
Like, we need to do something. We need to jumpstart this. He's like, Pixar's doing well. This is what they're doing. And he's like, I just need to reach out to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was the owner of Pixar. He bought it from George Lucas, and he was the one in charge. And Michael just like, he was trying to force something with Steve Jobs, and like, Steve Jobs don't play that way. And Steve Jobs like, nope, fine, we'll take our business somewhere else. You're not going to bully us around. And so Bob just kind of wants to build a friendship with him at first, and just met up with them. And Steve's like, hey, I've got this new iPod. You can play videos. It's like the size of a wheat thin. You can watch videos. And he's like, yeah, but I don't really have any content. And you know, right there, Bob's like, here, why don't you use some of ours? We got ABC. We got like Grey's Anatomy. We got this and that. Or we got like Lost, and what was the other show that was big? Alias. You know, that was a big show back then. Alias, right? And Steve's like, I like it. Just bold. You just like out there. And he's just like, I don't need to get like think tank, because like that was one thing Bob did. He got rid of like the think tank that was slowing down.
Yes.
Disney. He's like, no, we're gonna do things. And he's bold. And so that built up the friendship between him and Steve Jobs. And eventually, you know, like Bob was like all nervous to ask him. He was like, he told the board, he's like, we need to put in an offer for Pixar. Like, we need this. This is where our company, this is what we're doing, and this is what they're doing. And, like, it was funny because, like, the board was making fun of, like, they got a movie about a rat. Oh, well, that won't do any well. Like, and, like, Bob's like, no, it's really good. Like, I'm telling you, like, they're doing great things there. And so, as he's driving home, he just calls Steve, and he's like, hey, man, I want to buy Pixar. Like, can we do it? And Steve's like, wow, that's bold. Like, he's just like, you're just gonna buy it? And he's just like, yeah, we could just do this and that and this. And he's like, okay, well, let's get together and think about it. Like, and this is also a time period. Also, Steve Jobs is going through health issues.
Yes.
Yeah. So he also has to think about what's going to happen, because Pixar, is Pixar going to do as well without him? Because he's a major ego. I'm thinking, like, look what happened with Apple. Like, Apple's doing great, but is it the same Apple? You know, it's not, you know, so you also...
Well, even now with Pixar, you're wondering, like, is Pixar still Pixar? And
so he's got to wonder, you know, he has to think about his family's, like, wealth and legacy, because, you know, yeah, Pixar stocks, oh, that's great. Or would it be better to have it under Disney stock, like a name that's been around for almost 100 years?
Right, and a name that's already associated with your brand.
So it's just like, okay, let me make lots of money
right.
with this deal that, you know, my return on investment's great. So it all works out. You know, he buys it, gives them board, they agree. There was a lot of, like, reassurance of, like, we're not going to change your culture. You do you, and make us money, all right?
Right.
Make us money. You're great.
That was something that Iger did really well. Was most of his acquisitions were very hands off. Like, it says, we bought you, but you keep doing you. Like,
we bought you because we like what you're doing.
Yeah. We're just going to incorporate you under the umbrella.
Right.
So he buys them. $7.4 billion. A lot of money. Then they're like, okay, what else do we need to buy? How about Marvel? Yeah. That happens in 2009. Reaches out. Michael, let's see. Right here. So the CEO of Marvel was owned by a prior Israeli military guy named Ike, and he's kind of aloof and like kind of hard to. And so Bob had to use his magic and work with them, and eventually he got them to sell, basically going like, "Hey, we're going to make you movies. We're going to take this to the next level," and told them the timeline with the movies. And like other CEOs from other companies are like, "That's so stupid. You're gonna make superhero movies out of these characters. You don't even have Spider-Man."
Right.
Oh boy. How about some of that Crow right there? You eating that? Oh yeah.
Iron Man. Iron Man's not going to be a successful
Yes.
franchise.
Yeah, because all that was out there was Iron Man. It's like, that's it. Or you're gonna make one with Captain America and like Thor. Oh yeah. Well, that wasn't a great movie, but but like, look at what we have. Like, of all those like movies that have come out like in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
and all the movies industries, like everyone would say like, it's Marvel. It's
Yep.
the Simpsons of the 90s. It's the time period of movies. It's like everyone's gonna say, "Oh, Marvel was the one that dominated."
You
the
see
most.
like DC trying to be like Marvel, and it's
Well,
not.
You're like, that's cute in a very dark, scary
Yes.
way. Go
See,
back to your corner.
DC, the problem with the DC universe that they tried to do is that they tried to rush it.
Yeah.
Like, whereas, like, we waited, what, like
A long
5-6 years
time.
before we hit the first Avengers.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, they like, oh yeah, remember that Superman movie we made like 10 years ago? That's part of it. And
We
we'll-
sneezed and know like, "Oh, we're a team now." And they're like, "Oh, okay, this is a thing."
Exactly.
Who's
And
that
it was
guy?
just like,
Oh, who's that
Aquaman
guy?
suddenly appeared, so did Wonder Woman.
We got a cyborg dude here. Out of nowhere.
Exactly. It was just kind of like all of a sudden rush, which honestly I've yet to see any of those movies. No, I have seen. I did see Aquaman.
I saw Spider-Man. No, not Spider-Man. I saw Superman versus Batman, which I'm like, why would they fight? This is so stupid. I don't like
My
it.
favorite scene is that when Superman man slaps like Batman, and I go, yes.
So eventually, Marvel, he convinced him. He's like, "Hey, this is how we're gonna like build this in the acquisition." And they bought that on $4 billion. Okay, next step. What's the next thing? Star Wars.
That's a big one.
So to go
That's-
into someone's baby right there.
Isn't
Somebody
that
created
like
George
an
Lucas.
entire chapter just on like?
Yeah, each of these are their own little chapter. Where
Yeah,
George
this
is
was-
like, you're going to ask someone, going, "Hey, I want your universe, and
Right.
you have to give it to me." No, I made that. That's mine. Like, everything about it is his, and so that was the big thing, is schmoozing him. Again, good rapport back in ABC, where he's like, "Hey, I'll do your Young Indiana Jones," which was another crown or another jewel in his crown of content that he made, and so he was favorable with Bob in that way. Sold him the dream of Walt, of what Disney could do with the universe. Started with like, okay, this is, what George wanted was Pixar price.
Yes.
And they were like, whoa, cool your jets. Like, there are a lot of movies there, and there's this own thing, and they own their own technology. You got,
You got
sound.
You have ideas.
You got Lucas sound, or Skywalker. What was it?
It's like-
Skywalker?
Yeah, Skywalker sound.
Yeah, so you got some stuff, but like you got one universe, and so like they eventually talked to us, but George's like, I don't want anything less than Marvel. So okay, so they eventually sell for $4 billion. George, was trying to go like, hey, I'll sell you Star Wars, but I want to be part of it, but I don't want to be an employee. And this is where you start seeing
That's
George
where you
pull
saw the
out.
conflict.
You see conflict, but at that point, George signed it. And George has made some statements about it.
It was definitely messy.
Yes.
To
see
but
some,
the thing is, like,
it's like Mary Poppins. It's like that situation.
Yeah.
Oh, it
with
totally is.
content.
It's hard to like be on George Lucas's side for what he was asking. It's
Yeah.
like, you guys can pay for everything. I just want to be able to control everything.
It's like,
That's basically what George Lucas
yeah,
wanted,
yeah.
and it's like, no, that's not how this is gonna work.
This is a B, and aliens like ours.
Yeah.
But to a lot of credit with what Disney has done, a lot of the fans are going, I wish you let George do it. You
Right.
know? As
I
much
don't
guff as the
know.
prequels as he's gotten, the prequels have come back and resurgence, and everyone, he did a masterpiece with it.
It's like, no, Attack of the Clones is still the worst
it's still the
movie.
worst
Yeah.
one, but the content in the universe built in there, I think that's what Star Wars fans really appreciate about it.
Yes.
But then when you get like the sequel trilogy, everyone's all like, "We're missing something, like substance."
The thing that where Disney fell flat, in my opinion, when it came to dealing with episodes 7, 8, 9, was that they made it, this is the end.
Yeah.
And because you made it like this is the end of the Skywalker saga, you kind of like you put yourself in a box, and that's why we find ourselves in the situation with episode 9 where it felt like it was like this could have been 2 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And the biggest problem where those movies were story.
Yes.
Yes.
And like George had a story, and there were rumors recently where they're like Disney was going to kind of like, oh, that's one universe. Here's George's Star Wars.
Multi-universe of Star Wars.
Yes, the multiverse Star Wars. Yeah. Oh, we went into light speed, and oh no, the Millennium Falcon's here. Yeah. I mean, there's with new technology, as we've seen in The Mandalorian, where you can, make people look younger. We saw Moff Tarkin. Who's dead, show up in a movie. I enjoyed it. People are like, I look cheesy. And it's like, yeah, we all know it's cheesy because he's dead. He's not there.
He's not there, but it was so good.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Or when Rogue One came out, like, Carrie Fisher hadn't died yet.
Yeah.
But, like, seeing young Carrie Fisher, it's like, yeah, it's computer generated, but, like, it's still cool to see her young.
And we
again.
didn't go like, oh, why didn't she act there? Because you would be like, thanks for the plans. It's like, whoa.
We have hope.
It's not Carrie Fisher's voice at all.
Yeah, it is. Oh, they missed you. Oh, why did you leave me? Your smoky voice is too much for me.
Bad. Bad. I do not approve this impersonation.
You watch it, and like that first time I heard her voice, I was like, "Dang man, Carrie, get off the cigarettes! My goodness!" It was like, is Chewie speaking or is Lance? No, sorry, I'm defaming someone that is no longer with us. I appreciate the Star Wars movie we got. Okay, so we move on to Star Wars. They make the deal. So we go into Fox. He wasn't seeking to buy Fox, but Robert Murdoch, he was going into some legal issues. He was friends with Bob, not through politics. That's for sure. Bob was very liberal with his thing. And it starts off with like, hey man, are you running for office? Like back in 2016, Bob Iger was considering, running for it.
I remember hearing about that.
There were some rumblings, and he was preparing himself for that. So Robert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News and like Fox and all that empire, and they started talking, and they were talking about like, hey man, you did it right with Disney. Like you prepared for the future. And scale and getting things ready, and he goes, I don't think we got that. And so he's just like, hey, do you think you guys could buy us, and so there's a lot that goes into it. You have like monopoly issues, and then there was another offer from
Comcast.
For Comcast again, and eventually they made the deal. What he wanted to trade his stocks for Disney stocks.
Yes.
And he knew if he could do that, that would solidify his family's history. Like, boy, this will make this a super company. I mean, how many companies can you like name that have as much content as Disney now? They've just bought all these universes.
Fox has been around since basically the beginning of movies.
Yeah.
So there's a huge catalog that they have now.
Yeah. I mean, they bought the company for $71 billion. I mean, you thought like, oh yeah, Marvel, Pixar, like that's a fraction of what you're getting with that. I mean, thinking of all the X-Men movies. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four. No.
Yeah,
no.
those were
how about
great.
How about just Simpsons?
All two.
That's
Simpsons
huge.
is huge.
Yeah, that's a huge acquisition right there, especially as they go on to streaming. And this was a big push for him, where he's like, "This is the future. We have to get our content around the world, and this is how it's done." You see Netflix, and Netflix builds their business model and getting money like Disney does, but it's like, but we have content. They have to produce it. We have it, and we're gonna go forward. So we had to really sell like, hey, we're gonna take some hits trying to get this going, and this is, I mean, it came out at just the right time of the pandemic, and getting in people's mind of like, oh, let me turn on my TV. There's Disney Plus. Okay, there's oh, I need something that makes me feel good. How about we go on The Simpsons? Oh, let's watch a Disney movie. Like, families don't have to buy a library of DVDs.
Yes.
They could just turn on Disney Plus for like whatever amount. I don't even know what it is anymore. But
Or just give the remote to your kid.
and they could
almost,
just
yeah.
scroll through and they could pick what they want, and you'll
Yes.
get new stuff, new content all the time.
It's one
We're
thing
getting
that
great
like
TV shows.
will make Disney Plus last forever is their library.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Netflix's where like a lot of their big names aren't their own,
No.
and eventually those will go away.
They
Whereas
have to
like
create their
Disney has it's all their
owned.
own.
And that's
you
where
know?
they're like, we're pulling our content from other people where we make
Yep.
money, and it's like we have to store it here and we have to make our own money off of distributing it. But then we're in the streaming war. This is the golden age right now. Well, we're in the wars. I wouldn't say the golden age, but it's like we're getting a lot of content right now.
Yes.
Like, it's like you turn on anything, it's like, oh, I've got. I mean, everyone I talk to has like 4 streaming services at least.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, did you watch this on this? You watch this? Like, they're just all coming out.
And
with
you're
new
like,
stuff.
oh, what? Oh, have you seen this show? And you're like, what streaming service?
That is now part of our lingo.
It's like cable doesn't.
Cable's dying.
Oh,
it's
it's dying. And
dying,
like people are
yeah.
negotiating. Like they're like, please, we want your show. And like, nah, we're good. Yeah. It's like your
Yeah.
generation of cable watchers are going to die off. Like
Mhm.
the new generation watches everything on their phone or on their laptop, and so. You know, that finishes off Bob Iger's, like, period. I mean, he did, his big thing in the park was he made Shanghai Disney was his baby. He started off the company with being COO, was getting it started. He started from start to finish, took 20 years.
That was gonna be his big farewell, was
Yeah.
Shanghai. But then the Fox deal was happening, and so then he got
He had to just fine tune a few things, and you know the pandemic was like, okay, we'll help you a
Well-
little bit, and then he just like, I have to walk away.
I could
Yeah.
tell, like, when I saw that, like, when he made the announcement that he was stepping down right in the start of the pandemic, I could tell that was a move on his behalf, being like, I don't want to be associated with this, with
Yeah.
the Disney company, because I think he knew
It
this
It
was
was
going
gonna
to be
make a
bad.
hit.
There's austerity issues. You're gonna have to cut things, and you don't want to be the guy that cuts things.
Yep.
And he's just like,
And so-
I bought all this stuff for you. Good luck paying for all of it.
Yeah.
And then, now, Chapek!
Yeah, paycheck. But that's another
Paycheck,
day.
yes,
Paycheck.
that's right.
Paycheck.
Paycheck Chapek. That is a great name for him. That is a great name.
Oh, is it Friday? Oh, I'll get my paycheck.
Paycheck Chapek. That is his name.
What was
I'm-
it? Eisner came out with a quote about Chapek, and it says, I'm a big fan of Disney. I'm a fan of both Bobs. Yes, I hired Chapek. Is he the same executive as I am, or Bob Iger is, or anybody? Question mark, yeah.
You at the end, yes. He's like you at the end.
He is his own guy. He's very good at Disney when I was there. He took
Many moons ago.
Back in the days.
He took our home video business from a rental to sell-through business. That was very risky. He did a very good job in the parks. I am a shareholder, and I think he's doing it. I think
Believe in
he's
it.
going
I
to
believe
do
in
it
it
very
because my
well.
money's tied up in it.
But money is what we believe in what it's worth. And if we believe that Disney's worth something, it's worth something to him. He can cash that in his
There
retirement.
was a recent quote he did.
Yeah, I
so.
remember hearing about that.
So we'll wrap this up. You know, a legacy is what, you know, you think what you've done and what you bring to the future. You know, we look at everybody. They get the ball rolling. You know, they heard something, but it does get the ball rolling in the right direction. And, you know, yeah, we can knock and look back and like, oh, these guys hurt us here, but it's like the company's here.
Right.
And as quick moving as this world is, it's still here. We still get, you know, Walt's dream of like beautiful content, animation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, Bob said it's crazy. He goes, I'm blown away by the thought of being a kid watching Wonderful World of Color and Davy Crockett, and here I am. I'm, you know, in charge of it all. Like, and I imagine everybody thought that when they were taking over from Walt. Like, I'm in his shoes. That's amazing. And so, you know, these CEOs, I mean, they've done great things, and you can marvel at it, or you can watch Marvel. But there's, I really appreciated learning about these men and their accomplishments, and I'm glad that we do have what we have once you start digging into what has gone in the past. So that completes our episode. Please follow us on our social medias. Peter's got a wonderful Twitter that he's doing.
Yes.
Where it's fact of the day.
Yes, I'm doing this day in Disney history, so it's just a random fact for that day, as well as, I feel as, in my opinion, as important Disney news that might happen.
Not the, Animal Kingdom got its 4th garbage can.
No, it's look at this new Instagram cupcake that they're releasing this week. No,
the Figment bucket.
The 7-hour wait for a Figment bucket.
Yes.
Yes, I did not post that in there. But I did post about Tim Allen returning as the Santa Claus.
Oh,
I heard about that.
That's going to be good.
We'll have something to talk about next Christmas.
That's right.
Or the following Christmas.
Yeah, the
whatever they
following.
say. What else do we've got? And it's social media. Follow us on that, and please reach out to us on any of those. We like getting suggestions for episodes. We have taken suggestions from people just on questions that they have, and we've answered them or talked about them. So, with that being said, Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Matterhorn Yodelers. Please remember, before your bobsled comes to a complete stop, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember...
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.